Hi, everybody. We're back again for another segment of our look at movies of the 2010s. Today, we're going to take a look at sports films, 2010 to 2019. And we're here with Brian, AYBL Maine, and Doc, Sean. And we're going to do our top five as we do, counting them down five through one. Brian, sports films, what do you have?
Okay. I at first I didn't think. I said, "Wow, I don't know if we're going to come up with five sports films." But then again, when I started looking, I'm going, I actually have seen a lot of sports films
Yeah.
For this decade. Anyway, number five, I had Trouble with the Curve.
Ooh,
It's got Clint Eastwood and Amy Adams in it, and I think Justin Timberlake is like her
yeah.
love interest slash
Yep.
everything. But it's kind of a little bit of a baseball movie and also a father daughter movie in which he's trying to you know trying to battle against the way they think things should be done for recruiting players versus the old school way, which is basically go out and see players actually play to make an assessment. At the same time, he's also trying to repair his relationship with his daughter. Um, it's kind of a nice story. I didn't know how I was going to like this one when I first saw it, but actually when I saw it in the theater, I actually thought it was very good, and I went out and bought it on DVD as soon as I could get it. So it's a rewatchable movie, very much so. Number four for me is The Fighter, the one about Dickie Eklund, who was his most famous claim to fame actually was, other than being a drug addict, was he fought Sugar Ray Leonard one time, and it's a movie kind of based on, he thinks he's being filmed for an HBO documentary about him making a comeback, and actually what they're actually focusing on is the fact that he is a drug addict, and he doesn't really realize that's what's going on. At the same time, his brother Mark Wahlberg is actually training to be serious about a fighter. He's tired of just being a punching bag, and he wants to get out there and prove himself to be a great fighter himself. I thought Christian Bale did a great job in it, as his acting is very good in it. I like Mark Wahlberg's character. I love the fact that they've got these. How many sisters do they have in that
Oh
family?
my God.
It's
Yeah.
crazy, whatever it is, you're gonna have a Boston Catholic family. It's gonna be like a ridiculous amount of sisters or something.
Yeah.
I liked it. Um, Keeping with the staying in the ring, I've got Creed at number three. I thought, I didn't know what I was going to think about this at all. I said, "Oh, come on, really? Now you're tired of picking on Balboa. Now you just want to go back and pick on Apollo Creed. You're going to harp on that." But actually, it stood on its own as a really good movie. Michael B. Jordan does a good job in it as Apollo Creed's
Yeah.
son. He doesn't even find out that he's really Apollo Creed's son until they're actually well into the movie a little bit, seeking Rocky Balboa's advice and training so that he could actually be a great fighter himself. The story is really good. I actually enjoyed it a lot. Number two for me is Ford versus Ferrari. I went to see this when I was home a couple of years back. I was in Maryland visiting my sister, who I didn't know I even had at the time, and we started corresponding. And I took my nephews out to see a movie, and we went to see Ford versus Ferrari. I didn't know the whole story behind it until I actually saw the movie. I didn't realize what actually went into that type of racing. The lengthy racing where you're having to race for 24 straight hours.
Yeah.
Just crazy.
Le Mans.
Yes, Ken Miles was actually the driver, and again played by Christian Bale. Just plays this out of control
Yes.
Irish mechanic who's recruited by Matt Damon's character to be one of those drivers and everything. And it's about that. If Ford wants to be competitive, the things that they had to go to beat Ferrari. I mean, because Ferrari is always predicated on, we're not going to put out a lot of cars, but the cars we're going to put out are going to be great cars.
Right.
And Ford was never able to actually compete with that until they started having the mentality is, yeah, you got to put a lot more into your cars if you're going to compete at that level against the elite dudes. So I thought it was a good story. It's got some funny moments in it, which, you're going to get when you got Bale and Damon going back and forth. I liked it a lot. So Number one for me though was one that is sports related, but I thought it's a drama really. It's Concussion with Will Smith, talking about the ramifications of that football players and other athletes, for that matter, have from the continuous cases of concussion for playing pro sports. And just the even the beginning just kind of sucked me right in when I think it's Mike Webster from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Rich, is that correct? He was
Yes.
the center for the Pittsburgh Steelers, right?
That's
I
him.
believe.
Yep.
Yeah, they showed him like he was living in a truck. He was like he was going through these bouts of dementia where he would get ultra violent and everything, and suicidal. It was just crazy. And when they took x-rays of his actual skull post-mortem, it was just like mush. His brain was just complete mush from all the concussions that he had gotten over the course of his career. And at the time, I'm thinking to myself, wow, my kids all played sports. I mean, and one of the highest concussion rates actually is in girls soccer. It's crazy to think, but it's true. And it made me really step back and think. And I realized that, you start learning about the drama behind this, about how he wants to come out with this report, and the resistance that he gets, not just from the sports community themselves, but other people in the medical field who obviously have their own self-interests at heart.
Oh yeah.
Their stuff is tied. Their opinions are tied to money as well as anybody else was. And they were covering this up, and it's just horrible. But I thought it's such a good story. Great job by Will Smith on that. And it's a story that needed to be told. And I think it fits well here in sports instead of in drama.
Definitely.
Good choice.
Very good.
Yeah, really good choice.
All right, Sean, what do you got?
I got 5 different movies, Brian. But I was the same way there. How did I feel about going in there? Was I going to get 5? Man, I had no idea. Whatever. And then you get into it a little bit further, and it's like, oh yeah, well, there's 5, and some are just going to miss, and some are going to be. We'll see where they go. So I'm going to start off with. I'm putting my Canadian hockey movie in here at number 5. So definitely could have went in the comedies, but it's a sports movie. So I'm going Goon.
Goon. I saw
Goon.
it. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty funny movie anyway. I mean, talk about the life of a goon in hockey, man. And it's and let's face it. I mean, we're all, Brian and I are the same age, and Rich, you're older here, so you know what we're talking about with the goon age of like 70s hockey or 80s
I
hockey.
lived it, man. I lived it every night. Flyers.
These guys were not the most talented dudes on the ice by any stretch, and if they showed up on the score sheet night in and night out, it was for one reason and one reason only, man. It's because they're dropping the gloves. So it's a pretty funny movie. I wanted to put it in the comedies, but I put it in my sports. So I dropped Goon in there. It's a pretty funny flick if you want to watch something that's, but it does show the other side of what it takes to, especially at that time, not nearly as much anymore in the NHL at that level. So my number 4 is I, Tonya, with Margot Robbie there. Tonya Harding here, and man, what a story when you get right down to it. It's I still don't know what actually happened, if you want the truth. It's one of those ones that I don't know if she knew or didn't know, or what she did know and what she didn't know. I got no idea.
Yeah.
But the actual story behind it, and man, there's just there's some not smart people out there that are doing some things sometimes, man. That's just you go back to that movie Masterminds we talked about in the comedies, man. Those were 100 on the IQ scale, entailed 3 people. So that's it, kind of following in the same neighborhood of like what kind of thinking was done in this movie. I, Tonya, around her and the troubles that she had in her life. Her mother was a real piece and everything else, and there's some sympathetic parts to Tonya's life before it actually got to whatever actually happened, and that's for debate. But I, Tonya is a pretty good movie, and Margot Robbie is really good in this flick, man. Really good.
Yeah.
My number 3 is Warrior. with
Oh,
Tom
yeah.
Hardy. I think we like Tom Hardy too, eh? So
Yeah, I think so.
he's show
Strong.
up again later on in my list. He shows up already on a lot of people's list already. Warrior is a great flick, actually, man. So it's I'm not much of a mixed martial arts guy either, or the UFC fighting and stuff like that. Sure, I got into it at the beginning, and that's kind of just faded on me over the years. But this one, the movie in this case, Nick Nolte not slurring in a movie and actually playing something pretty solid is pretty good to start with. Right at the gate. So
Yeah.
when Nick's on and Nick's acting, is Nick can act, man. That's but Tom Hardy's fantastic in this movie, and his brother, and it's the trials and tribulations in each of their own lives and how they actually meet in this one big championship thing. It's called Warrior for a reason, and you can base it on a couple of characters in the movie, to be honest with you. So just found it very entertaining, definitely in this category for sure. My number 2 is another race movie, but mine is Rush, actually. I mentioned before, I haven't seen Ford versus Ferrari, but I like car racing too. So I like all sports. So I can't get around this, but the story with Nick Lauda and everything else, James Hunt, the history behind it and actually what happened. I knew the stories of what happened to Lauda and stuff like that. That's something I would have went back and watched myself, but watching the movie and stuff like that, how it reiterates, the levels that these guys went. And, let's face it, man, drivers back then were a lot more hands-on what was going to happen, even inside the setup of the car and everything else. What we're seeing now, day in and day out on the weekends with these guys racing, stems from people like Nick Lauda and stuff like that. They were actually doing it before the Schumachers and everything else came along in F1 and stuff like that. So I found it to be really well shot. I thought Ron Howard did a great job with this movie. It's shows really well. The characters are great, and it's based on a true story. And from what I make out of it, it's it's 90-95% accurate of what they're actually telling you what actually happens in one season here in F1, which is pretty horrific and pretty incredible in one sense. So love that movie. My number 1 is Moneyball. You guys know I like my baseball. I just love the story. I can't get around, Billy Bean and the Billy Ball here, man, and everything else that's going on. I'm mesmerized by the score in this movie. I'm mesmerized by a whole bunch of things, man. I just found the music is great. The acting is great. The whole story behind it and how the A's actually got to where they got to. I some of it's pulled out, but Philip Seymour Hoffman playing the manager and it almost like mathematicians and everything else. And it's based on statistics on how they're actually going to set up their team and everything else and the story behind it. And they really haven't wavered on how they actually build their team in Oakland.
So Rich,
in all these years.
Rich, how many teams do you think after that built their teams predicated on that formula?
Boston Red Sox did.
A lot of them did. The Cubs for a while, they got Theo Epstein over there after he
The
left
Royals
Boston.
probably had that big year.
The Royals, they didn't spend a lot of money on their players. A lot of their guys were homegrown. But Oakland's still doing it to this day. Like Doc said, that's the way they operate, I would say maybe half the teams do that to a degree. Other teams just buy people, the best talent, like the Yankees and things like that, and some people just have great organizations like San Diego and Toronto. These guys have great young players coming up, but eventually they're going to have to face the facts. They're going to have to pay them down the line. Will they let them walk or will they sign them? That's what it comes down to.
Okay.
But Oakland still has that philosophy
Totally
of statistics and on-base percentage or certain things they go by that work for them.
It's a good pick there. Good pick there, Doc.
Yeah. Thanks, Brian.
Very good. It didn't make my list. I thought it was a little slow, but that's one I need to rewatch because it's got such acclaim. I think it was nominated for Best Picture that year as well.
Might have been. I don't know.
And Brad Pitt was nominated for Best Actor.
Brad's good in that.
I know he is, and a lot of it is his personal life a little bit, and I don't know. I gotta look at that again because it didn't crack my top 5. It was in consideration though. Same with Trouble for the Curve. I'm a big baseball fan, and neither one of those movies made my list. Number 5 for me is Borg versus McEnroe, a tennis movie. This is one I caught recently on Hulu. It's solid. It focuses on the 1980 Wimbledon men's final between Borg and McEnroe. Bjorn Borg, of course, the ice cold. His pulse doesn't get above 40 beats per minute. You got the hothead McEnroe, who's played fairly well by Shia LaBeouf in this role. A lot of flashbacks to how their upbringing, how they became who they became. It's pretty in depth. I thought the tennis sequences were pretty good. They recreated that match, that long extended match, very well. I remember watching it on a Sunday morning back in 1980 when I was into tennis more than I am today. And these guys were the kings of the world in those days. So I thought it was a solid sports movie. Number 4 is 42, the Jackie Robinson story starring Chadwick Boseman. There's my baseball movie, by the way. Harrison Ford as Branch Rickey, the guy who recruited him to be the first black ball player in the big leagues, to break the color barrier of Major League Baseball back in 1947. So I really like the movie. It's kind of a TV made for TV movie. It's not real in depth. It's a paint by numbers movie, but it's historically accurate, and it's pretty well done. So I gotta give it its marks for that. Number 4. Number 3 is one that Brian had on his list. His number 3, I believe, Creed, starring Michael B. Jordan, Sly Stallone, playing, of course, Rocky Balboa, his trainer and mentor. Michael B. Jordan's playing Adonis Johnson, the son of Apollo Creed. Of course, any movie that's set in Philadelphia, I'm on board. I always enjoy a good boxing movie, and I thought this was the best one of the last 10 years. And my number 2 and my number 1 are completely out of my element because they're both race movies, race car driving, which I am not a fan of. But these movies were excellent, both of them. Number 2 is Ford versus Ferrari. Matt Damon, Christian Bale, Doc Haddett. I was riveted. I thought the chemistry between the two was outstanding. Great racing sequences, 24 Hours of Le Mans, 1966. So it's a timepiece as well. It takes you back to that era. Damon and Bale, 2 of the better actors working today, and they really they made a good movie here, directed by James Mangold. The sequences are excellent. You can feel that speed going around the track and all the manipulation with the cars to beat Ferrari. It's excellent. My number 1, though, is I agree with Doc, Rush. I thought that was an excellent movie. I recently saw it a couple weeks ago, directed by Ron Howard. Chris Hemsworth plays James Hunt, and Daniel Bruhl plays Niki Lauda. And this is like a character study of these 2 men. You got one who's a playboy off the track, who's a womanizer, and he happens to be good at auto racing, but his priorities, I think, are pretty much to be the lifestyles of the rich and famous. He likes hanging out with models and the extravagant lifestyle. Daniel Bruhl is this real intense Niki Lauda character, an Austrian who will do anything to win a match, and a really, really strong movie. Again, the racing sequences in this are fantastic. Ron Howard does a fantastic job in this movie, directing it. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. And neither one of these racing movies, it's not my favorite sport. It's probably my 15th favorite sport, but it works in this context. These movies are really exciting, and I'm glad I saw them. So I'm really enthused by both of them. Can't recommend them highly enough. Ford versus Ferrari and Rush, two of the better sports movies in recent times. So
3 different
one.
number ones.
yeah, 3 different
Yeah,
number
3 different
ones.
number ones. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's not even close.
All right,
Yeah.
so that'll wrap up sports for the 2010s. I'm glad everybody. We had a lot of diversity there, a lot of different sports, a
We
lot of
did.
different films, which is good to see. So thank you again to Doc and Brian, AYBL Maine. Check his channel out, sub him up, and enter his contest. Please leave us some comments, some feedback. Give us your list, any sports movies that we overlooked, and we'd like to hear about them. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time. We've got more categories coming up. Take care. Bye-bye.